Aloha everyone, I'm Amanda Lee Patty, your host for the Radical Raw Authenticity Sessions, your source for inspiring, powerful, and conscious conversations with some of the world's most leading and inspiring visionary game changers. Before diving into today's session with Bryan Arturo, I would like to invite all of you to check out my upcoming immersion with Shine Reeling of Peace Sticks down in Nicaragua, July 15th through 21st, where we will be inviting you and holding space for you to drop into your amazing heart of transformation, reclaim your personal power, step into the seat of a facilitator through Peace Sticks teacher training, and share time with the amazing local people down there, creating peace sticks, surfing, experiencing jungle hikes, as well as ceremonies. And you can find out more about that on my website at amandaleepatty.com. Welcome everyone. Today I have with me Bryan Arturo. Bryan is a facilitator and land steward living in Ojai, California, supporting proven solutions to restore water to drought-stricken California and healing land through integrated animal systems energizes Bryan daily. He has led and organized retreats and socially impactful gatherings from California to Chile while learning simple ways to honor and heal the planet. Over the past 4 years, he has supported grassroots movements as a digital nomad and certified permaculturalist on a journey to find a balance between nature and technology. Bryan founded Earth Journeys and supported NuMundo's Global Impact Center database since its inception. Bryan's bursting love and laughter is no joke, and you can find out more about him at earthjourneys.org/who-r-we. Aloha everyone, I'm Amanda Patty and welcome to another Radical Raw Authenticity session. And today I'm super excited to have Bryan Arturo with me here today. And Bryan is one of the founders of Earth Journeys as well as NuMundo. So welcome, Bryan.
Thank you. Super grateful to be here.
Thanks. It's a pleasure and an honor having you here with me today. And I always like to start things off a little bit with, finding out what your story is. How did you wind up becoming kind of the Bryan who's sitting here today, and what inspired you to create both of your companies?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I always had this drive to be an entrepreneur since I was a child. Even as a, tiny little elementary school child, I was always, trying to start businesses and find creative ways to express my creativity. And so I found myself in the business world, but after a few years of being in that world, I just got really bored. I mean, I didn't feel like any of my skills were being used to the fullest. I felt like I was kind of confined to a box. And so I also had met this amazing woman, Shanna Gladstone, who was already exploring this world of eco-villages. And so together, we basically set off on an adventure, and for years traveled the world, mostly Latin America, visiting these different sustainable living centers and seeing alternative ways of learning through doing. And living in a different way, closer with nature. And that's the short version. that's as concise as I can get with, how I've become who I am today.
Beautiful, beautiful. And would you say there was any one particular area in Latin America that really struck your fancy when you were down there?
Yeah, I think it really came down to the amount of time that I stayed in different places. We were traveling pretty quickly, but I did a permaculture apprenticeship in Ecuador. So I got to spend a whole 3-month period of time just completely immersed in the last remaining coastal jungle called the Choco in Ecuador. And my parents are both from Ecuador, so I'm Ecuadorian. As a bit of reconnecting with my roots. But what I found is that what I was really reconnecting with was the natural rhythms, the natural cycles of nature. I mean, what better place to reconnect with, the humanness of existence, or just who I am, separate from all the conditioning, than, the jungle, where you're surrounded by the birds, the plants, the bugs, the elements. So that was really one of my greatest tipping points, where I was kind of confused and searching, and aren't we all endlessly confused and searching? But there was this moment where, I was alone in nature and I was sad. And then I just learned how to pick myself up. I really had no other choice but to, pick myself up and realize, hey, I've got everything I need inside myself if I take the time to recognize that. So that was my most memorable moment in South America.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, a lot of my followers are kind of into the whole personal development space. Would you be willing to dive into a little bit more deeply about how you went about picking yourself up from that moment and then kind of coming back to yourself?
Yeah, it was almost a little bit like a vision quest, where, I've never actually personally done a vision quest yet, but the process was really disconnecting from my normal support systems. My partner, for example, Shayna, has always been one of my biggest support systems. And so I was without her. I was really just with some Ecuadorian farmers, and I had a mentor, which was really helpful also. But that was more of the surface level, like, hey, this is the basics of farming. And so I was really left on my own to take care of myself emotionally. And, I was still learning Spanish, so I didn't have a lot of people to dive deep into a conversation about my emotions and, my growth process. So in that sense, I relate it to a vision quest of, I was kind of stripped of my support systems, kind of just on my own, still safe, still completely safe in this, on this planet. But being in that state for an extended period of time really allowed me, to access that strength from within. So I think that's the best I can describe it.
Beautiful. I love that. And I love how you shared about, really tapping into and allowing yourself to feel your emotions and be present with them, and just kind of trust in the more universal support that's there for all of us. I feel like, particularly with men and awakening men and men who are on this conscious path, a lot of them are still learning how to give themselves permission to do that and to be with that part of themselves.
Absolutely. There's a lot of, signs and modeling going on in, the popular cultural narrative in the US and in the world. And so, it's up to us as people to, be good role models, and as a male, be able to, access a full range of emotions and, not be embarrassed of that. And, it's a lifelong process. I'm still learning a lot.
Yeah. It's we're giving ourselves permission to be human again.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not robots. We're not like famous Hollywood actors or TV show stars or any of that. We're little monkey beings.
Exactly. We are. And giving ourselves permission to really tune into all aspects of the human experience is part of what makes, life sustainable for us. Because as soon as we shut down any one part of that, then life isn't as sustainable. But I know you're really big into sustainable living, and I'm curious, what does sustainable living mean to you?
Yeah, I love that question. Well, first, I just want to start with the language that we use. So, at Earth Journeys, we use the word sustainable a lot. And we try and use beyond sustainable as much as possible. Because what we find is that the word sustainable is relatively accessible for people on Earth. We've heard this word used for the past decade or so, and generally have an understanding of what sustainability is. Preferably, I'd love to talk about being regenerative and having regenerative living practices, so going beyond sustainability. But I'm not sure that people are ready for regenerative in language yet. I mean, of course, those in that niche, those, pushing the envelope forward are, incredibly gung-ho. But we use the word sustainable because it's a way to kind of invite people in and then, teach them more about what it means to go beyond sustainable into regenerative living. So to answer your question, it's really taking time to do an audit of your life and see, okay, what are the interactions that I have with the world around me? What does it mean to produce waste? And then it goes inward also, like how can I be sustainable or beyond sustainable with the way that I treat myself with my body? And so it's really, there's this word mindfulness that's used a lot also in, the modern cultural narrative. It's beginning to just reevaluate our relationships with everyday objects, with really every relationship that exists.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love how you kind of presented it as a whole picture, as a very holistic way of looking at how we are choosing to show up and live our lives in this remarkable interrelationship that we have with everything, with our own, internal systems, as well as everything that is, quote unquote, outside of us.
Right. Yeah. And, so there has been a debate in the past around climate change, and now, we're getting more and more scientific reports, and we're having this conversation more often because of what's going on politically. And considering it's now obvious to me, at least, and hopefully the rest of the world, that climate change, or I like to say global weirding, is in effect, it's like, okay, perhaps it's time to reevaluate. Hey, we are going to the bathroom in clean drinking water. And, I'm living in Southern California, and we have, tremendous drought. And so clean drinking water is becoming less and less of a privilege that we have. So, isn't it fascinating that there are systems that are already in use and effective around the world? For example, like a dry toilet or a composting toilet, where instead of creating waste and, when you go to the bathroom, it has to be filtered, and all this energy and time and money has to go into filtering it out of our clean drinking water. Instead, we can transform that input, those nutrients that we excrete, and they can be turned into organic soil. And so this is, just one example of living a more sustainable lifestyle. Is, if these were legal in the US, which there's a project that's working towards that in San Francisco area. But if they were legal and they are being used a lot in South America, where I spend a lot of time, then we could be cycling our nutrients. It's like taking the basic idea of recycling that most people use and applying that to, so many more of the materials that we use on an everyday basis.
Right. And even just thinking of it on a kind of a larger scale, more macro scale as well, in terms of, the waste that gets dumped into the ocean.
Absolutely.
From sewage and everything else. So just taking that, looking at, more clean drinking water, that we would have access to, healthier oceans. Right.
It's like nature already has its systems figured out. It has solutions for everything. And human beings, bless our hearts, we've just, been expanding our population rapidly, and we're very excited about the technology that we have access to. And so, of course, we would want to be comfortable and meet the demands of our people and try and have these really large scale systems. And I think we're at a time in our society where, our little monkey beings have to reevaluate and have to access something higher and say, hey, we need to be a little bit more modest. We need to take a little bit of time to reflect. And instead of, continue this unlimited growth, realize that the earth really has a finite amount of resources. We have X amount of resources. Mm-hmm. So, we can't keep acting like they're unlimited. We have to learn how to continue to cycle through them. And just be a little bit more responsible.
Yeah. And I love what you share there, and a couple of things. And Mother Nature has the answers. Mm-hmm. She totally gets it. And what an incredible invitation it would be if we gave ourselves permission to step back a little bit, and instead of going forward with kind of the robot brain that we have, and the overly innovative brain sometimes when it's disconnected from our true nature, in creating all of these things, to sit back and ask, how can we create stuff that actually works in harmony with Mother Nature as one big symbiotic organism?
Right. Yeah. And, I think it's really healthy to be, dreaming in this way. It's really healthy to be living in this way. And it's a gradual transition. There's no reason to, beat yourself up over not having, the perfect, most eco-friendly life. It's absolutely a transition that people have, different levels of comfort around diving into. So it's, in my opinion, it's everyone's work. We all hold a small piece, and it's too easy to kind of write it off and say, oh, other people are working on it. If we were all just a little bit more conscious of, our daily practices, then we could inspire each other and support each other in that way. And then one other comment I'll make on that is, it's not easy. It's tough in this, extractive economy and the harsh imbalance of power that we see. Of course, people are trying to make ends meet. It's not easy to make a living. So that's often the pushback that I get. It's like, it's all fine and dandy that you want to live an eco-friendly lifestyle, but that's only for wealthy people. Like, I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to make a living. So I think it's up to anyone who has any level of privilege to leverage that privilege and create those opportunities. There are social and environmental impact organizations that are creating a whole new way of, generating profit, but also increasing the abundance of nature. Like Ojai is an incredible example, the Yerba Mate company. They're reforesting land in South America. And yes, they're selling their product, and they're just continuously making more and more effort to go be a beyond sustainable company. And there's lots of great information on their website about, how they're doing it. There's models out there. People are doing it. It's just, we have to not be lazy and, just go the extra mile, because the planet needs it. Well, the people need it rather, we're attempting to lift up and save the human species. I'm sure the earth will be fine no matter what.
Oh yeah, it should be totally fine without us. I mean, better than fine. Think about beyond sustainable.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to help each other out. That's the dream.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, I love how you touch upon kind of the personal responsibility that we have kind of on an individual level, and then on a change maker level, and then for the people who have access to large sums of money to actually, funnel that in a way that positively supports kind of the holistic global initiative. in communities that way. And I'm curious, since there are so many people in kind of the change maker community, the light worker community, who have these wonderful heart-based intentions, and so many of them are struggling through various things of, making ends meet, which can be kind of multidimensional in and of itself. What are some of the suggestions that you have in terms of inviting them to live a, sustainable or beyond sustainable regenerative life with the means that they have access to at this point in time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I want to talk a little bit more on work. It is a hot topic. One really interesting workaround that I learned from my partner, Shayna Gladstone, is that it's often easier to reduce the amount of our consumption first, rather than want to sustain the same amount of money spent or resources used. So first, it's like we can do an audit or reevaluate what we're consuming and also how we're living. Oftentimes, because we were raised a certain way, we're used to a certain level of comfort. Whereas if you literally write out your values and look at what's really important to you, then you can realize, hey, I don't actually need X, Y, Z, and I can get these things a lot easier from my friends or from my local community. So that's, one great way to take a step back and say, okay, maybe my lifestyle doesn't need to be as extravagant. So what was my next point? We're talking about work. Okay, so in terms of the actual practices of being more regenerative, one thing you can do is realize that when you're buying food that is shipped from a really far away distance, if it's crossing the entire world to get to you, then that has a carbon footprint, and that's contributing in a small way to global weirding. So, of course, growing your own food is really a really simple and smart way to reduce your costs. Now you don't have to spend as much on organic groceries, increase your health. You're eating organic produce, so you're going to, literally get sick less often. And then you're keeping the food local, so you're cycling nutrients in your backyard or in your balcony. You're no longer shipping food long distances. And then instead of throwing all of the food scraps into the garbage, which would have another offset in the landfill and contribute in a small way to global weirding, perhaps you could get a worm bin of red wrigglers. And now all of a sudden your food scraps and the food that you're not finishing, or, the scraps of tomatoes and celery that you're cutting up, can be eaten by these worms and transformed into nutrients for the soil for you to get some free organic fertilizer to continue growing food. So you're kind of closing the loop there. That's one, little small way to be a little bit more regenerative. And I mentioned that these have small impacts, which I believe is true. However, these living practices are typically really nourishing for the soul. There's a connection to food, there's a connection to nature that is also healing. And then also, your friends see that you're doing it, and it can be done together. So now you're socializing more, and your friends will probably be inspired by what you're doing. And that's how it organically spreads. So it's not just serving one function, but it's how do we stack as many functions as possible and live a more wholesome, holistic life. And then one last thing, just to add to that, back to the work point that I forgot before. So one creative workaround is also finding trades. I don't necessarily think trading and bartering is a large scale solution. I think there is a reason why, money is a universal energy exchange that's convenient for the world. However, when one is transitioning, so maybe let's say you're used to working a service job, maybe you're a waiter, or maybe you're in the corporate world and you want to transition to a more regenerative lifestyle. Maybe for a year or two, you're trading and you're living in a tiny house in someone's backyard. Hey, you're surrounded by nature. Your expenses are very low for 1 or 2 years while you start a new business that's more focused on regenerative living. So it's like we can be creative with how our needs are met when there is so much abundance in the world already, literally monetarily and also in nature. We just have to be a little bit creative sometimes to make a transition. And maybe it's not easy, but it's going to be really interesting and probably a lot of fun. And you're probably going to learn a lot too.
Absolutely. And I love all the different points that you touched on that. I feel like it was like super packed in my mind. Bouncing. I'm like, oh yeah, this and that.
Yeah, sorry if I'm a little scattered. There's just so many pieces, it's a whole new world.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it's also interrelated with each other. And some of the points I found really interesting. And I'm starting to see it here kind of in, the Boston area. I feel like California is light years.
Right.
Light years ahead of the East Coast, by all means.
Well, yeah, I would say in terms of what we're talking about, definitely.
Yeah. If you want to talk technology and stuff like that outside of Silicon Valley, maybe, but
right.
in terms of, sustainable regenerative living, just basic recycling stuff. You guys are so far ahead of the Boston area. But what I'm starting to see are small communities of people who are choosing to, grow their own food. They're choosing to compost. They're coming out and saying, particularly in the millennials, saying, you know what, I don't want to be paying $2,000 a month for rent. I don't want a house that's $300,000+. I want to live super simply so that I have the freedom to do what really lights my heart and soul on fire. And, for a lot of them, it's traveling to different areas. It's making the difference in the world and sharing that global impact. So I am starting to see that happen here. And I feel like one of the key pieces that's starting to come together is that community aspect and that invitation for people to kind of return to their roots and start putting, communities together again and really come together in support of each other and the earth, because we've lost that.
Right.
Largely. I mean, people say like, oh, I live in this community, but it's not really, a community.
Well, yeah, I think you're drawing a really interesting example of potential transition from a more urban lifestyle to a rural one. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a really good example of like, reevaluating your lifestyle and your needs where, for example, if someone with a job in an urban environment would want to, go take a trip, to rediscover themselves, maybe they would be used to spending a lot of money and staying in nice hotels and buying packages. But what about, the communities that are emerging who are very supportive of people in search of something greater, who are willing to house and support and enrich those who are searching. So it's instead of spending your whole paycheck on, this traveling adventure, you could access these communities or rural areas. There's every possibility out there to trade or just be received, receive gifts of housing or experiences in order to lift each other up. That's something that I think most certainly existed in the past, but nowadays it's incredibly accessible and it's a little bit less scary to go out on those adventures with, digital resources like NuMundo.org, which, I'm a core team member. I'm not one of the founders. Shane is one of the founders, but yeah, it's a free resource where you can go and, find these centers.
Beautiful, beautiful. And speaking about, communities and things like that, you have some tours coming up this fall, right? Sustainable Living Tour.
Right.
And would you be willing to share what that's all about and what people could expect should they come join you on this amazing adventure?
Absolutely. Okay, so to tie it into what we were saying, I think, living this lifestyle that's beyond sustainable, striving towards it at least, because, no one's ever perfect. It's like we're all doing our best. I think it really starts from the inside. It requires a degree of feeling empowered. So I believe there's unlimited ways to access this self-love, this self-empowerment. Everyone has a different flavor. And what we've created is a way to jump into the sustainable living movement in Southern California while really exploring, your inner strength and your inner love in community. So what we are doing is stacking as many functions as possible and saying, hey, what if 30 people came together in Southern California and we all acted like a mobile village? So we were this family where we all could open our hearts, we can express ourselves, our full range of emotions, talk about our hopes and dreams, also talk about, some of our deepest fears. And what if we were traveling to the best sustainable living centers in Southern California on a bus, and the bus happens to be hot pink and have solar panels and runs on biofuel? So that's the basic idea. Shannon and I wanted to take our years of traveling to these centers around the world and turn it into this packaged experience where we could be, more rapidly supporting others in creating this shift for themselves, inwards and outwards. So, people are learning more about how to build soil, how to restore watersheds, what practices communities and farms and villages are using in Southern California. And then finally, it's all about creating a supportive community of people. So it doesn't just end at the tour. It's all about staying in touch, hanging out, collaborating, saying, hey, these are my needs, not being shy to do that and seeing who's there to support each other. So, like you were bringing in the community aspect, it's like, how can we as human beings, as primal human beings, return to our more tribal selves of, saying, hey, we're going to support each other. We don't want to be isolated in white boxes. We want to play and work together.
Yeah, and what an incredible opportunity for growth, not just in like the learning aspect of it, but as a community as well. Because when you're in a community with 30 people on a bus, stuff's going to come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's such an incredible gift to be given that opportunity of, experiencing being triggered ourselves and potentially experiencing somebody else being triggered by us, learning to step more fully into who we are and give ourselves permission to, like you said, ask for what it is we need and want and desire at that particular time, and really give ourselves permission to express that full emotional spectrum.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And even to redefine how we interact with people or how we interpret different situations. For example, I used to believe that I had a set amount of triggers. Like, these are the 3 things that if you say or do these 3 things, that's it. The gloves are off. I am triggered. Game over. And so it's, it's like an opportunity to look at that and say, wait a second, like, is this something that I've created with my mind? Have I created this trigger? Is it possible that when someone does something that has upset me the last 30 times that it has happened, that the 31st time that I may find love for this person or find love for myself and decide that, no, this doesn't have to be a trigger for me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful coming out and saying that. And I'm saying, even looking at my journey and the journey of some of my clients and things like that, we all definitely have our set triggers where it's like, yeah, if you do X, Y, and Z, that's it. You're going to piss me off. Or
Yeah.
But also seeing kind of the smaller triggers as well, and the incredible invitation and opportunities for growth, and asking ourselves, geez, you know what? This trigger keeps coming up. Why is it coming up? What is the story behind it? You know, how old do I feel? Like, oh, geez, you know, maybe that part of me that's feeling triggered is actually, you know, my inner, like, 4 or 5 year old who feels really hurt and abandoned and afraid at this point in time. And gosh,
Absolutely.
you know, how can I extend her, you know, or him, if it's a male who's having that experience, the love and compassion that they're really asking for?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lifelong journey. And I think the best we can do is seek out, you know, the best avenues to heal those wounds. You know, there is no secret. It's just do your best in your journey and do your best to heal it. Because, you know, if we're talking about going beyond sustainability on the surface with this tangible, you know, with the objects and the resources on this land, you know, I think this conversation is really potent, because first we have to show up, I believe, as our fullest selves with love for ourselves. And then we can be in service. It's this never ending loop that makes life so interesting and can just feel and taste so much sweeter if, you know, yeah, there's this loving and healing container or environment that we're all supporting each other with. And, you know, I think that's what a lot of these, you know, I'm going to say more new age type communities are all about. And, you know, no one's perfect. At times there's ego. At times there's, yeah, these wounds come up and surprise us or shock us. But, you know, we're all doing our best. And I'm excited to see this sort of message just become a more widely accessible and just broad message for the planet. Because I think as human beings, we all want the same thing. We all want love. We all want to be healthy. Yeah, it's a big dream, but you know, my mission is about trying to break it down to bite-sized pieces that just are universally make sense, so that we can agree and move on. And, you know, maybe we can agree to disagree, but we're all doing our best.
That's right. That's right. We are, you know, in any given moment, we're doing the best that we can in that moment. And, you know, it's beautiful when we reach a point in our own evolution to be able to sit and realize that, yes, you know, in this particular moment right here, I'm doing the absolute best that I can. Not get stuck in that whole, like, comparison trap. Like, oh, geez, you know, maybe 5 days ago I could have done this better, or, you know, if I was this and everything else, because it just, like, weighs it down, and it creates that whole cycle again, versus just being really open and loving with ourselves and saying, yeah, I'm showing up as fully as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, I believe, part of the danger of, you know, the mainstream media and even social media. You know, it's like, could be dangerous if we're constantly comparing ourselves, and it's up to us to just, you know, let go of that and not compare and see everyone else as an inspiration or as a teacher. You know, what does this person have to teach me? Why is this person, you know, why am I feeling this way? Because I'm experiencing, you know, this person in this way.
Right. And looking at the social media too, where so many people tend to show the best and brightest sides of themselves, you know, and we're comparing our mud and our muck to, you know, somebody else's, you know, starlit sky. Mm-hmm. And it's an invitation for us to step back and say, oh, okay, wait a minute here. And breathe and dive in and explore that. And I think there's a shift that's starting to happen on social media as well, where people are saying, you know what, enough of that.
Mm-hmm.
And are putting themselves out there and sharing their shadows and sharing themselves authentically. And the message is starting to spread that it's, you know, it's okay to be you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I have to say, I'm absolutely guilty of, you know, really just sharing the brightest moments. It's kind of just, I'm the kind of person who's always smiling. So I'm just constantly sharing my smile. And I would love to also start, you know, sharing my more intimate or my darker moments, because I think, yeah, that's super, super helpful to balance out the message that, you know, we're all seeing. Yeah, just had to say that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when is the Sustainable Living Tour?
Oh, so it is October 1st to 12th. We're doing it once a year. Our first year was last year, and it went so well. I mean, we are lifelong friends. We're still communicating. And this year we're adding a 7th center, the Cal Earth Institute. They have these amazing domes that are made of earth. They're earthquake resistant, they're fire resistant. The materials cost is really, really low because, you know, you're using compacted earth, so you don't have to go to Home Depot and you know, buy as many materials or trees. But yeah, I'm really excited because it's a journey of a lifetime, and we're really excited to just keep it going every year. And we're really trying to keep the permaculture principles in mind of, you know, one of the principles is small and slow solutions. So instead of using the rapid growth startup technology model of, okay, we've got something that works, let's duplicate it in every city across the world as fast as possible. Instead, we're you know, trying to build an organic community of people who really love each other. So, hey, we're going to stick in Southern California for a long time. You know, just do it right here and keep it running in the best possible way until we really have discovered our best practices. And then, hey, if it comes about that we can find collaborators in other areas in a couple years who are completely, you know, aligned and trusted, then great, you know, we can grow. But that's for another time.
Beautiful, beautiful. And where can people find out more about the tour and apply to join you all?
Yeah, thanks for these questions. I'm like totally forgetting to include all the details. So our site is earthjourneys.org. And if you do /tour, so earthjourneys.org/tour, that'll bring you right to the page with all the information about the Sustainable Living Tour. And there's an application to join because we want to make sure that, you know, we're really bringing in the people who will benefit the most from the journey. And so there's just a short application. It's like takes 10 minutes to complete. And even answering the questions on the application, I feel is supportive in one's journey because, you know, answering a really well thought out, open-ended question, you know, puts the mind and the soul through this process of, what do I really want in life? And, you know, what do I want to get out of this? And so, yeah, even just applying will be supportive, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt about that. Having been through like different application processes myself, it's always an interesting adventure and journey in sitting there and being on, you know, the applicant side and filling stuff out. It's a growth opportunity in and of itself, and asking, you know, do I really want this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been an honor and a pleasure hosting you.
Yes, I'm so grateful. Really, really helpful for me to, you know, practice sharing my message and, yeah, and thinking through all these aspects of sustainable living. So yeah, I'm super grateful that, you had me on your show, and yeah, I hope to hear more and stay in contact. Thanks so much, Amanda.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bryan.
Mm-hmm.